back in the news, COVID origins. Is this something you've brought up with the Chinese, or is it something the building is looking into? And do you have any comment on the Energy Department's assessment that came out this week?
It won't surprise you to hear I don't have any comments on purportedly classified assessments that may have been put forward. The National Security Advisor, others have spoken to this in recent days. It boils down to the fact that there are a variety of views within the intelligence community. There are some elements within the intelligence community that have reached conclusions on one side. There are others that have come to conclusions on the other. There are a number of intelligence community agencies that have put forward an assessment that essentially makes clear they don't have enough information to conclude one way or another. But to your question, we have repeatedly raised the underlying question with our PRC counterparts. For more than 2 years now, the PRC has been blocking from the beginning international investigators and members of the global health community from accessing information that they need to understand the origins of COVID-19. This is about the question of the origins of COVID-19, but just as importantly, if not even more importantly in some respects, it is about preparing the world to withstand and ultimately to prevent another global pandemic. In order to prevent a future pandemic, we need to fully understand the one we're still emerging from. The president and others have directed his team to do all we can to get to the bottom of the origins of COVID-19, again, to garner a better understanding of how we can prepare ourselves to confront future pandemics. This is something that we have raised with the PRC repeatedly because it matters to the American people, it matters to people around the world, and it should be of concern to the people of China, who have also suffered tremendously from this current pandemic. Dylan?
Yeah, Ambassador Burns said this morning, the ambassador to China, that China's going to have to be more honest about what happened 3 years ago in Wuhan for you to continue working together productively. Do you have any comment on that? Anything to add to that? I mean, is there anything specifically you're doing other than just continuing to ask China to be more transparent? Because obviously they're not doing that. So
it is essentially what I just said, Dylan. We believe in the importance of doing all we can to understand the origins of the COVID-19 pandemic, both in the context of the pandemic we're still emerging from, but also to better prepare ourselves for any future pandemics that are to come. We're doing a couple things. We are, and the President has tasked the intelligence community now to prepare assessments, now multiple rounds of assessments on the origins of COVID-19. And so that is an effort that is in-house, as it were. The intelligence community and all of its constituents, departments, and agencies are scouring the information that's available to them to put together assessments about the most probable origins of this. When it comes to those assessments, there have been some agencies within the intelligence community that have come down on one side, others have come down on another, and others have reported that there's insufficient evidence to come to any firm conclusion at the moment. But as with any intelligence assessment, we are always incorporating new information, new facts, new details from every source of information available to the U.S. government. Some of that is open source information available to everyone. Some of that is information that is available only to the U.S. government, and we'll continue to do that. The other part of this is continuing to impress upon the PRC the importance of transparency, and this is an issue that we've been clear and candid with the PRC on from our earliest engagements at senior levels with the PRC. The President has raised this, the Secretary has raised this, the National Security Advisor has raised this. It's been raised repeatedly and consistently at various levels because it is that important to us. Now, there are other multilateral institutions like the WHO that also have a role in this. Unfortunately, the PRC has been blocking from the very beginning the ability of international investigators and members of the global health community from accessing the information that they would need to form their own conclusions, to come to their own judgments. But we will keep pursuing all of these avenues, knowing that Yes, it's important in the context of COVID-19 and in the context of this particular pandemic, but it's also important in the context of preventing and being able to respond to a future pandemic should one emerge.
Just to be a little more specific, though, he said they're going to have to be more honest. So is there going to be any consequence at any point for them not being honest? Because you said you've been raising this issue, and you have been raising the issue, but there's just been no movement whatsoever from them, despite how much you're raising it.
Well, across the board, Dylan, regardless of what the issue is, we typically don't get ahead of policy responses before they are announced publicly. But we are going to do what is most effective, what's most effective to protect the American people, to protect people around the world from the emergence of future pandemics. In the first instance, we believe international cooperation is the most important element. It's why this department has invested so much in something we call the Global Action Plan, bringing together dozens of countries from around the world to respond to the current pandemic, but also to build up the infrastructure that will allow the international community to respond much more effectively should, God forbid, another pandemic emerge. There are conversations and steps that we're taking with the World Health Organization. There are conversations and steps that we're taking with United Nations more broadly. And yes, there are conversations that we're having with the PRC, chiefly because transnational threats like the threat of a pandemic, whether it's COVID-19 or anything else, doesn't adhere to borders. It doesn't respect international borders or lines on a map. So it's important for our own sake, it's important for the sake of people around the world, it's important for the sake of the Chinese people that we are doing all we can through every conceivable forum that is available to us to take steps now, not only to put an end to this pandemic, but to better prepare ourselves should another one emerge. Anything else on China?